huge challenge or incongruence concerning the church or Christianity in the world is that there is a huge gap, a widening gap between what we preach, the Christ, the gospel that we preach, and what we actually do or how we live our lives. The world looks at us and is confused because there is such a widening gap between what we profess, what we preach, what we claim to be versus what we actually do in our lifestyles. What I would like to mean by that is that if we Christians were following the scriptures and live the scriptures, the church would have been a much more powerful organization, and this world would have been a much transformed world than what it is today. And that's why today I want us to look at this scripture. If Christians, or if all the world, all of us, we are following this principle, the world would have been a far much better place. Our marriages would have been much more blessed. Our communities, our schools, our workplaces would have been better places, paradises, than what they are today. James chapter 1, verse number 19 says, "So then, my beloved brothers, let everyone be swift to hear, slow to speak, and slow to anger." And verse number 20 says, "For," that's explanatory, or maybe the reason, "for the anger of man does not produce the righteousness of God." My focus is on verse number 19, so I'll say it again. "My beloved brothers, let everyone be quick, be swift to hear, slow to speak, and slow to anger." Why would the Apostle James speak in such a manner to say, "Brethren, let everyone be swift, be quick, be sharp to hear, slow to speak, and slow to anger"? Because these three things are our key failures in the human society. Whether it's a family, a community, or any organization or institution, as far as interpersonal issues or relationships are concerned, these are the three most critical areas where communities fail or rise up. So the apostle of Christ here goes straight to those three most critical issues. And he issues these instructions to all the believers to whom he was writing to, saying, "My beloved brothers, brethren, wherever you are, if there are instructions that I will give to you wherever you are, I would say, let everyone be swift to hear, slow to speak, and slow to anger." Why this? Because the biggest problem amongst people is that most of us, this is the problem of people everywhere, anywhere on this planet Earth. The biggest problem, why we are having problems in this world, interpersonal issues, why relationships are breaking, why nations, communities, races are fighting each other. One of the biggest challenges is that we are not swift to hear. We are not good at hearing. Listen to me. What does it mean to be swift to hear? By the way, let me take you backwards a little bit, because context is critical. Do you know the kind of people or the kind of circumstances these people were in when the Apostle James was writing to? He was writing to the people in the dispersion. These were believers, that were dispersed to different countries, different nations, because they were running away from hardships, persecutions, as the believers were being persecuted. So he's writing to them. So these people were under persecution. Listen to me. When you are under persecution, it's very easy that you're here, you don't have patience. So you don't want to hear, you don't want to listen. And you are tempted to speak very quickly. Right? You are so quick to respond, to react. You overreact. Every time people are misused, abused, there is an inclination, of impatience. There is an inclination towards being quick to speak because you want to complain, you want to murmur, and you are very temperamental. So, this scripture originally was being written to those people under tough conditions, under unpleasant circumstances, whereby you have no patience to listen to anybody's side of the story. And you are quick to speak because, your emotions are high. You become so temperamental and you are quick to anger. So that's why the servant of Christ wrote and said, "Brethren, let everyone be swift to hear, slow to speak, and slow to anger." What does it mean to be swift to hear? Okay, when you are listening, because listening is not, it's not an action of motion. Okay, you can walk quick, all right? You can speak quick, all right? You can be swift in speaking. You can be swift in, because these are actions that have to do with motion. But hearing, I don't think there is something about, it's all to do with motion. There's no movement in hearing. So what does it mean to say swift to hear? It simply means patience. Give it more time. Pay attention. Be a good listener. One of the challenges of we people, why we are having lots of misunderstandings, lots of problems, lots of divorces, and lots of cases in workplaces and everywhere, it's because we don't have patience and we don't pay attention. We don't want to listen, because listening is a low position, is a passive position. All of us, we want to talk, we want to dominate, we want to be the ones in charge. And here, the man of God, the servant of Christ says, no, humble yourself, be patient, give people time. Hear, all right? Don't be quick to make a judgment or conclusion. Isn't this the major problem, the major reason why relationships are breaking down? Because we don't have patience. We don't want to listen. And many times when we want to listen, we listen not to understand, but because we want to get the points and respond very quickly. So the scripture says, let every man be patient. Let every man have the art of listening, the patience of listening, the humility of listening. And by doing that, we will avert so many problems, so many misunderstandings, because a lot of us don't listen. We don't have the patience. We don't have, the patience the kindness to give other people time to tell us their feelings, how they look at the issues. It takes a lot to listen. It takes a lot to pay attention. So, be swift to hear. And he goes on to say, and be slow to speak. What is being slow to speak? It means be patient again. It also means take your time. Don't speak out of emotions. Don't overreact. Be slow to speak. Which in other words means think. All right? Process, digest, consult, and fully understand. Pay attention. Because if you make emotional decisions, or if you speak out of emotions, you will not be able to resolve anything. You can't be able to resolve any conflict, because you are quick to speak and you speak out of emotions. And lastly, he says, be slow to anger. Why? The biggest setback of we human beings, why we can't resolve our issues, why relationships are breaking down, why nations are going to war, is because we are quick to ride our emotions. We are quick to anger. And in fact, anger is a huge problem. It is toxic energy. And that's why verse number 20 climaxes by saying, for the anger of man does not produce the righteousness of God. So anytime you are tempted to become angry or to act in anger, remember the warning that the anger of people doesn't produce the righteousness of God. There is no righteousness in you bursting out in anger towards your spouse, towards your children, towards your parents, towards anybody who has offended you. Yeah, it's painful, but you need to take note of this before you act angry. The anger of man does not produce the righteousness of God. So, be swift to hear, slow to speak, and slow to anger. If I can add a little bit onto being slow to speak, look at what James says in chapter 3, verse number 5. This tongue, he says, the tongue is also a little member, but it boasts of great things. See how a small fire can spread to a large forest. And look at verse number 6, how James defines the tongue. He says, and the tongue is a fire. The weld of iniquity among our members is the tongue, which defiles the whole body and sets on fire the course of nature. And it sets on fire, and is set on fire by hell. This tongue, if you don't know, it is a weld of iniquity. It sets relationships on fire. It sets nations on the course of war. So, be swift to hear, slow to speak, and slow to anger. For the anger of man does not produce the righteousness of God. Stay blessed.